Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Zinzino talk. Zinzino is a test-based nutrition company out of Sweden, and one of their flagship product is what we call balance oil. It is a proprietary blend of omega-3, and we have a test which you can perform to see what levels of these oils you have in your system. My name is Dr. Abraham. I'm located in Kuala Lumpur, capital of Malaysia, which is in Southeast Asia. And this is a quick overview of the test results so that as a member who does the test, when you get the results, you'll be able to understand the test results better and act accordingly. I need to give a little bit of a background to this test for newcomers. And those of you who are used to this, please bear with me because I will take only about 3 minutes or so to introduce the newcomers to this, the basis for this test. Now, this is related to health, and health is a very big topic. To put it briefly, the 4 requirements of health would be a good amount of oxygen that you get in your air, water to consume adequately for the body, nutrition from food that supplements and supports the functions of the body, and also your lifestyle. Oxygen is free, water is cheap, and therefore these are 2 areas that you can take part quite easily without much guidance. When it comes to food, it is a little bit more complicated, and today we are going to focus in just one area of the food. There are 3 macronutrients. That's a big word, but it simply means carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. One could do without much of carbohydrate, but you definitely need proteins and fats. And our focus today is on fats because the dried blood spot test is to find out the balance that you have in your body with regards to essential fats. Now, we consume fats from different sources, vegetables, fruits. Yes, some fruits have high content of fats like avocado. And of course, most of the fat comes from meat and dairy products. The body breaks down the various kinds of fats that we consume to the building bricks of fats, which are fatty acids. These get absorbed into the body, and the body resynthesizes them into the fats that the body needs. The body requires fat for energy, for production of a large number of hormones and many other substances, and also for the structure of the cell membrane, which is almost 50% fat. Our body requires fats in all the areas, including the structure, and the main structure is the cell membrane. Now, can we reconstitute all the fats that we need? Unfortunately, there are 2 fats that you have to supply the body from the outside. In other words, you must consume these 2 fats to make the body complete in all its requirement for fats. And because it is essential that we include this in the diet, it is called essential fatty acids. Now, what are these 2? These 2, in biochemical terms, because that is the only way that we can address it, are omega-6 and omega-3 oils or fats. Both terms are interchangeable. Omega-6, omega-3, not only do we need them, but we need them with a particular ratio to enjoy superior health. It should be omega-6 to omega-3, 3 parts to 1 part. 3 parts of omega-6 to 3 are one part of omega-3. Now, when we do a blood analysis in the markets that we are, and I'm talking about Western Europe, Eastern Europe, North America, Southeast Asia, we find that the average ratio varies from 15 to 25 for omega-6 when we compare it with one part of omega-3. Now, that is quite a lot of variation. And I'm giving you the average figure. We have outliers who go up to 100. Few, very few, but it can go that far. The big problem here is when your levels are out of whack or your ratios are far apart, it allows a certain amount of inflammation to continue in the body, which seems to be the basis for all the modern degenerative diseases. So it is in our interest that we not only get the 2 essential fatty acids, we get them in the right amounts to enjoy superior health. Now, we don't need omega-6 simply because we have too much of it in our diet. Yes, it is an essential fatty acid. However, we are over consuming it in our diet via the vegetable cooking oils that we use. I think all around the world, modern diets are quite generous in using fats, and most of these fats are commercially prepared vegetable or seed oils, which have been processed, and we use quite a bit, and so our omega-6 levels are very high. But when you look at the omega-3, we find that our supplies in the diet have depleted over the last few decades, and we are very short of it. So when it comes to topping that up, we may have to change the diet a little bit. The first steps would be to reduce the consumption of oil so that the omega-6 is reduced. And the next step is to boost the consumption of omega-3. The best source of omega-3 is fish. And not all of us are very keen on taking fish every other day, particularly fatty fish. Once in a while looks like a treat, but regular consumption can be a chore. And the only way to do that would be to take a supplement of omega-3 oils. Now, omega-3 is also called fish oil because that is the major source of omega-3. So it is interchangeable, but not entirely so. Now, how can we know that the omega-3 or fish oil that we take is useful to the body? For example, over the last 3 decades, there have been heavy marketing for omega-3, and we haven't seen the kind of improvement we have been promised. Tests show that even people who are on omega-3 supplements don't seem to achieve the ideal 3-to-1 balance. And that's the reason Zinzino has introduced a proprietary blend of omega-3 polyphenols combined in such a way that it results in a product that will increase the absorption of omega-3, 1, and also get it integrated into your cells where it is functional. How do we know this? A lot of claims are made in the market. How do we know this? That is via this dried blood spot test. It is a test that we promote in Zinzino for anyone who wants to know where they stand even before they start the balance oil, and also to understand how they have benefited after taking it for a period of 120 days, approximately 4 months. Why this time span? That is the average time span required to change all the red blood cells in your system. This test is based on analyzing the red blood cell content of omega-6 and 3. So how is this test performed? I urge you to look into our website, particularly zinzino.com TV where there is a short video on how the blood test is performed. Briefly, it is a prick on the finger and we require just 2 drops on a blotting paper, not a withdrawal of blood from your vein, just a prick on the finger. The blotting paper will absorb the liquid part of the blood and leave behind the red blood cells. The drying time is about 10 minutes or so, after which you can pack it into a special envelope that is provided and send it to the company. Now, this specimen is forwarded to a lab in Norway, Vitas. It is a very high-tech lab. They work very closely with universities and research institutions, and they have a lot of experience in doing this particular analysis. Just to give you some figures, as of this recording is made, Vitas has performed in excess of 650,000 tests with regards to analysis of omega-6 and 3 in the red blood cell. From what we know, that is the largest database of such a test in the world today. And they have fine-tuned this process to a point where we can have very reliable results. And the results are provided to you in 2 separate pages, 2 sections rather, maybe 3 pages. And these sections are: 1, a qualitative analysis of the fatty acids, and also a quantitative analysis. Now, let me just show you the initial report. Okay, this is the first page of what I would say is a qualitative assessment, and you will notice there are 2 colors. One is red, the other is yellow. In fact, there is a third color, green. When it is red, there is imbalance, or you can say it is insufficient. The levels are insufficient. If you have yellow, then you are in the moderate category. Now, there is a third color, green, which is optimal. Okay, we will go on to the bar diagram, which is clearer, but I just want to talk a little bit about this. This is the main ratio that you're looking for, and to really highlight the fact that the imbalance is quite severe. It is insufficient, highly insufficient, if I may add. Okay, now all of them are expressed in a bar diagram, but let me just say something before we go there. You will notice that it says protection value. Over here, you will see a omega-3 index, mental strength, membrane strength or fluidity, and this is a very unusual oil which we need to talk a little bit about. Now, these are estimates made by algorithms that have been worked out by Vitas Lab in conjunction with the universities that they work with. Now here, the whole thing is expressed in a bar diagram, and the same values are given, and it is much easier for someone to show. Like, for example, this person, the omega-3 balance, as we saw earlier, is pretty bad. So it is in the insufficient range, which is red color. Okay. Now, if you move into the yellow, it's moderate. Ideally, you should be somewhere here. And if you notice, it is somewhere between 3:1 to right up to 1:1. Some people in the community, health community, believe that this is even better than 3:1. Some go down as much as 5:1. Zinzino takes a middle road. Anything that is 3:1 or lower is fine. Now, when we come to the second measurement, you will find that it says protection value. Now, this is somewhat an estimation of your omega-6 and 3 balance contribution to the immune system. The immune system requires more than omega-6 and 3 balance. It requires good nutrition, adequate amount of sleep, vitamins, and minerals. Examples would be vitamin D3, zinc, magnesium, and so on. One of the contributors to that is omega-6 and 3 balance. When it comes to that contribution, this particular person is rather low. And in fact, it's quite bad. Now, this person may be having a near normal immune system. Now, with the contribution from omega-6, 3 balance improved, he will probably get back into this level. Okay. So this is a estimation or a value that is given of the contribution by this omega oils to your immune system. Let's look at the next one. Now, omega-3 index. Now, some people may achieve omega-6, 3 ratio as 3:1. For example, someone has 500 milligrams in their diet of omega-3 and 1,500 milligrams of omega-6. So they might hit a ratio of 3:1. But then another person whose levels are 250 milligrams of omega-3 and 750 milligrams of omega-6 will hit the same ratio. But then the second person doesn't have enough of both. This gives an indication whether the amount you have is enough. Please remember the ratio is 3:1 ratio, but the amount is indicated by the index. Quite obviously, this person doesn't have enough. The next bar that is being explained here is your mental strength. Now, all our mental capabilities, cognitive abilities, our academic performances, our skills that we can demonstrate are expressed through a well-working brain. And the brain requires a good amount of omega-3, particularly the DHA fraction. Now, it doesn't mean that if you don't have enough omega-3, you will become less intelligent. All the skills and abilities are expressed through the structure called brain. And if you maintain the structure at its optimum, your ability to express through them would be the mental strength. Now, with this person, though he was very insufficient in the ratio, it doesn't seem that bad. It is still insufficient, and this person has a long way to go. Now, he or she needs more DHA. So this arrow gives you indication as to how bad the deficiency is. The next two, okay. Here we see cell membrane fluidity. Cells. Human bodies have a large number of cells. Estimates vary from 10 trillion to 100 trillion. I would prefer the more conservative figure, 10 trillion. Every cell has thousands of chemical reactions going on over a 24-hour period. Now, the cell is maintained in its structure, shape, and integrity by a very tough membrane. That membrane is 50% fat, and a major part of that fat requires omega-6 and 3. The cell membrane is all important to maintain the cell functioning at its best. It must allow in oxygen, nutrition, hormones, water into the cell while not allowing any toxins. At the same time, the waste matter that is generated within the cell must be taken out, and the cell membrane has a large control over it. So it is in our interest to make sure the cell membrane gets the best raw material possible to maintain its integrity and function. Not only that, cell communication is extremely important in cell repair, cell regeneration, cell multiplication. Now, when we say fluidity, it is also the flexible physical part. The closest example I can think of is a small balloon filled with water. Now you will notice that balloon is quite flexible, but it's quite tough. It doesn't break easily. What we mean by cell membrane fluidity is not only the physical flexibility, but the biochemical flexibility. So for this person, he needs more support from the omega-3, 6 requirement, and he is quite insufficient at that level. Now the next one is arachidonic acid index. This is a very interesting fatty acid. If you notice, you have a red part on both sides of the spectrum. A little bit of explanation is due here. Whenever we have a foreign body that comes into the cell or into the body has to identify it, make sure it is neutralized and removed. What are these foreign bodies? It could be any kind of protein like virus, bacteria, and so on, or chemicals that are harmful to the body, so on. There is a process that the body mounts, and this process is very complicated. It is a biochemical nightmare to study inflammation in the body. This process called inflammation requires arachidonic acid. So we need to have arachidonic acid to be able to mount an inflammatory response. And therefore, our ideal position should be somewhere here. So we need for it to mount an inflammatory response. But if we have too much of that, we do not want that inflammatory process to be prolonged in the body, because that can cause damage to the native cells and set up the body for getting degenerative diseases later in life. So it is bad if it is too low, it's bad if it is too high. So these are the qualitative assessments of the fatty acids, and we move on to the quantitative. Now I want to get you familiarized with the layout. Here would be the label of the type of fat that we are looking at. The next column is the value that you need to target for. And please be reminded, these are not absolute values. This is an average value. So if there's a variation of 5 to 10%, that's fine. Okay, this is what you aim for. This is the target. Your value is in the second column, and it will tell you where you stand so that you can compare. And the difference is listed in the third column. Okay, so the deviation is a certain number, but the deviation can also be expressed by a percentage. Some people would like that because they get a better picture. So the last column is the same as the third column, except that it is expressed in a percentage form. Okay, now I mentioned earlier that balanced oil is basically omega-3. Then why are we measuring saturated fat? Now the test results actually provide you more than what we need to give you. We give you a measurement of 11 different fatty acids. 3 of that are listed here, and then we'll look at the rest later. This 11 fatty acids make up something like 98% of the fatty acids present in the red blood cell. So it is fairly a comprehensive view. Now, saturated fatty acids, it's good to know, is very important for the body. We need saturated fatty acids, but we need very little actually. And when we exceed the intake of normal amounts, there is a problem. The cell becomes a little bit more rigid. And we saw the cell membrane fluidity in the earlier slide. Now that fluidity will decrease if you take too much saturated fat. So keep your saturated fats maybe about 5% or less of the total calories that you consume in a meal. You can balance it up over a period of 24 hours. Need not measure every meal carefully. So saturated fat, important for the body, but at the same time, keep a tight control on it. The next one is omega-9. It is also known as oleic acid, and some people would like to call it monounsaturated. Just a quick review. When we say saturated fats, obviously there are unsaturated fats, and omega-9 is one of the 3 unsaturated fats that will be listed here. Now, what is the difference? A little bit of biochemistry, not too much. Fats have a backbone of carbon chains satisfied in their limbs by hydrogen atoms. So if the carbon chain is fully satisfied by hydrogen atoms, the molecule becomes straight and the molecules can be packed quite tightly. Okay, they are called saturated fats. They tend to be a bit more viscous and can be solid at room temperature. The unsaturated ones have areas in the carbon chain which do not have a complete number of hydrogen. So they are not fully saturated with hydrogen and they are partially saturated. So it's called unsaturated. There are several types underneath that. If there is only one double bond where there is lack of hydrogen, we call it monounsaturated. There is more than one, we call it polyunsaturated. And some variations of that are also called trans fats. For the purposes here, the unsaturated fatty acids are not straight. They are a little bent. Therefore, they cannot be packed very tightly and they tend to be liquid at room temperature, such as omega-9. Omega-9 is a very healthy oil. In fact, if you are in a position where you need to cut down your saturated fat, we advise that you up your monounsaturated fat. The major source of it is olive oil. And by the way, balanced oil has a generous amount of omega-3 in it. Now we move on to the exact amount of omega-6 and 3. This is the one that we've been looking for. You have been consuming balanced oil, which has omega-3 and omega-9, as we showed earlier. And of course, polyphenols, which is a group of antioxidants absolutely necessary for the body to absorb and use omega-3 and omega-6. Now, you will notice that omega-6 and 3 are actually a family of fatty acids, 4 of each. Now, these are, some of them are intermediate forms and some of them are used directly by the body. Now, the amazing thing about nature is even the intermediate forms are useful to the body. Take omega-6. This is what we get in our diet. The body can convert it to other types of omega-6. And at every level, they are useful. No claims made here, but this GLA has been associated with the body using it to burn stored fat, provided you initiate the process by increasing your physical activity and have a tight control of the calories that you consume. And GLA further helps that effort. Of course, several companies have marketed them separately as weight loss products, and they have not delivered on that promise because many people think that just by consuming GLA, you will achieve it. No. Okay, so this is the level that is found in the body. For this person, it seems fairly adequate. the difference is only minus almost 6%. Okay, arachidonic acid. This is the funny acid that we saw, which we need in small amounts, and we don't need them in large amounts. The target value is here. In this person, it is little above the target value. How much more? It's about 18.4%. So this person needs to be a little bit careful. Where is the source of arachidonic acid? Mainly meat and dairy, much less in vegetables. So this person probably has to look at the consumption or reduction of the consumption of meat and dairy products. And of course, this is another omega-6 oil that is very useful to the body. However, it is pretty low. It is at minus 41%. So this person has to look at the omega-6 consumption. We saw the earlier figure ratio. He's taking too much. How come he is short of this here? Probably the person is taking omega-6 oils that are refined, heated to a high temperature while cooking, and therefore deforming the oil. Because of the amount consumed, it gives a high value. Because these are unhealthy omega-6, there are needs here which have to be corrected. So it is better to switch to cold pressed vegetable or seed oils rather than processed omega vegetable or seed oils. Okay, now we come to omega-3. Omega-3 is also available through vegetables. It is not only fish. You can get it from seeds like flax seed and so on. However, the vegetarian source of omega-3 comes as alpha-linoleic acid. Now, this needs to be converted to this 3 to be useful to the body. So if there is a vegetarian who's been not on any supplements, he may have fairly high alpha-linoleic acid. The conversion may not be efficient enough. People who do these studies tell us the conversion in humans is very poor, anything from 5 to 7%. Now, I've been in practice for more than 4.5 decades. My impression is that the conversion must be a little higher, not so low. Otherwise, a lot of vegetarians would have died out. Now, some studies indicate that the conversion in a complete vegetarian, someone who doesn't take any meat, eggs, or even milk, the conversion rate is higher. They also find, some studies show, the conversion rate is even higher among vegetarian women for some reason. There is an influence through other factors which are still not clear. Okay, so it is ideal if you get this 3 directly, which you get in the balance oil by Zinzino. However, if this needs to be converted, that's fine. Now, this by itself has a mild anti-inflammatory effect. All of them have an anti-inflammatory effect. Now, maybe that's not the right way to put it. Omega-3s do not reduce inflammation directly. They seem to remove the basic causes which go on to cause inflammation, or rather, they try to minimize the underlying causes for inflammation. So it is important that we have all this at normal levels. Now, there seems to be an importance of DHA for nerve function. Sorry. This area, DHA, is important for nerve function. Our brain is a collection of, the estimate is anything between 50 to 100 billion nerve cells. And they also tell us that more than 50% of the weight of the brain, which is about 1.5 kilograms, more than 50%, is just fat. Now, this fat is absolutely necessary to support the nerve integrity. There is a fat layer that coats nerves and also helps in the transmission of signals. A major part of that fat is made up of DHA. Now, this is so important that the requirement for DHA, even in the third trimester of pregnancy, and I'm saying requirement for the fetus, increases dramatically. Therefore, it should be in the diet of any expectant mother. More so when they're growing. Development of the brain can go on till about 5-6 years, and further maturation goes on till about 16. So it should be a major part in the diet, and make sure you don't miss this out. And then, of course, even in old age, we have to maintain the requirement. As we get older, we are subject to dementia, degeneration, and then we have people who are ill, who have experienced a stroke or traumatic brain injury. They will need more DHA support. So this is very important. And this particular person is down by about 40+%. That's quite a bit. So he requires this in large amounts. Okay. So this is not an educational video, but it is to also basically understand how to go about looking at it and get the best value from this reading, and then correct yourself by adjusting your diet, number one, and number two, taking a supplement like Zinzino Balance Oil. Now, this test is, let's say, the first test. And then when you do the second test, you need to compare the results. And if you supply your test ID, Vitas will give you the results of the first and the second test, so that on one piece of paper you are able to compare and to see whether you've made an improvement. By the way, these tests are confidential. The lab will supply the results only to the email that you have chosen to give, and it is up to you to share it with anybody that you feel you need to. So here we see that this is from another person, from test 1 to test 2, 120 days. There are many members and partners who are, well, that not that patient, and they do it a bit earlier. And in this part of the world, I can tell you that almost all who did it after 2 months, just 60 days, have seen a major improvement. Okay, so here you see improvement all along the range. Okay, now I hope you have understood what I've said so far, and usually the first round we catch about 40 to 50%. If necessary, go through it a second time and you will get the gist of it. I'm sure that you have many more questions to ask. At this juncture, if I may, we have Zoom meetings which we conduct on a weekly basis. I would say it's called a web chat, not so much of as a webinar, a chat where we talk about this in detail, and we have time for Q&A to be able to address your personal concerns. Thank you very much.